we are back in reality.
Well, we're
Re-entering reality.
So today we're going to talk about... So we've watched some Frasier. We're still in season 3.
We've been making progress. You're driving us forward.
Miss the days when each season was like 24 episodes.
Yeah, that was nice.
What I really like about this season is how much they're making it about Roz and Frasier's friendship and how, you can have two heterosexual, opposite sex, opposite gender people be friends. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't remember. But yeah, I like that. And I think it's just crazy that in 2024, so almost 20 years later, this is still a debate.
Yeah.
It's so upsetting. And it's like, I think the way they're portraying it right now, at least my read, is like, yeah, Frasier would have sex with Roz if there were no cost to it. And maybe Roz feels similarly. Probably not. I don't get the impression Roz is particularly attracted to Frasier. But, they prioritize their working relationship and their friendship over that. Which I think is true for, like, a lot of heterosexual single men, Like, are they attracted to their female friends? Like, probably sometimes to some extent. But I don't know. It's like this whole idea that, like, no man can be alone with any woman who he's not married to. It's like, just because some men have impulse control issues or whatever, to put that on every woman and every man.
That's a lot.
People are individual. And yeah, it's just the whole Mike Pence, can't be alone with a woman. And it's just, I can't believe we're still having these conversations. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Frasier, actually, though. We're here to talk about a different thing we watched today, which was the visualizer.
It was specifically, if you're wondering, Vythm. Vythm. It's a very, very nice visualizer for Mac. Particularly, you can use the microphone on your Mac to sync it with whatever external audio is around it, which is, for today's purposes, was excellent.
And today's purposes were, we ate some magic mushrooms last Sunday, right? Was it last Sunday?
Last Thursday. Been a little over a week.
Yes. Okay, that makes more sense. Last Thursday, we ate some mushrooms. I've eaten mushrooms not many a time, but a time or two. You had never.
It was my first.
It was your first time.
It was probably, from a self-discovery level, the most productive 5 hours of my life. Also the most just intense, but also peaceful and also absurd and also hilarious and also exhausting. It was a lot, but it was very productive.
And then I was like, okay, if you're going to have a good time on mushrooms, then you're almost certainly going to have at least a decent time on MDMA. Obviously, that's not true. Anything could happen, but I felt pretty confident that you would have a decent time on MDMA.
We should refer to it as Molly, or dates with Molly. I don't know if the algorithm is going to be happy with us.
Okay.
Just call
Molly.
it. Nah, just screw it.
Whatever,
you know what? We'll spin the wheel. We'll spin the wheel.
Well, I can't even call it Frasier every time. I call it Seinfeld sometimes. So we'll see what comes out of my mouth. But either way, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know why. I was just like, let's just do it. Let's just get out of the way. I thought it would help us understand each other. I mean, it was but first used for couples counseling.
Yeah, I think a doctor that I've been talking to about stuff referred to it as an empathogen, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
And totally can see that now.
Yes, it tends to increase people's empathy. It decreases their, again, these are averages. People's fear response goes down, so people are less guarded, which means you're less guarded against, like, the things people tell you. You're more impressionable. You're more suggestible. And yeah, and what I'd read was like sometimes some of us have like a guard at the door of our brains, like a sentry at the door, and it keeps out certain memories or thoughts or feelings that feel unsafe to like allow in, and MDMA can put that guard to sleep and allow those things to come in, which can be healing if you feel like that's something you signed up for and you're safe, but it can be also very unpleasant if you don't realize that that's a possibility. So I don't know. I think a lot of people just think of MD or Molly as a party drug, and it can be, and it is, but you're not always going to have a good time on it, and it can bring up some stuff. It can lead to some feelings and thoughts and memories that you're not necessarily going to enjoy, and I think that that's just a really important thing to communicate to people so that they don't get blindsided, so that they don't find themselves in a situation in which it's just really not safe or convenient to be in that state.
Yeah, and like when you brought up I've actually this last week asked parents about specific things, just making sure I wasn't going to have the potential to run into any certain memories that I wasn't particularly looking forward to running into if they existed. Ended up not being a thing, but I
remember you telling me about that. I didn't connect those two things until just now.
Some of it was, I wanted to know what I was going into. Like, if I knew there was potential for certain memories to exist, I wanted to know that they potentially existed before getting blindsided by them, essentially. Just seemed like a potentially smart way to handle it.
Well, I appreciate the concern, I guess. Yeah. Anyway,
I have a healthy fear around that because, for like in both cases, like very productive experiences, and like very, like, I mean, I feel like it's allowed us to build insane amounts of empathy, but like also I can see the potential of like how it could be very unpleasant.
Yeah. And for me, I nearly always have some anxiety, especially going into the peak. So it's, a lot of people will say it's just like, it's all love, it's all fun, it's all joy. And it's like, okay, that's cool. That's for you. For me, it's different. And I'd just rather be pleasantly surprised than blindsided by a negative or a difficult thing, I guess, a difficult experience or whatever.
Yeah, and I think like I've gone in expecting the best, but also having a healthy fear around, this could pull up some painful things, and like that, I think that mindset is built around like I don't want to get blindsided, but like if I know what to expect to some degree, like it's not going to hit in like a devastating way during the middle of one of the experiences. If that makes any sense.
So yeah, this time once again, we're sitting on the couch, though instead of watching Planet Earth and listening to music, we're listening to music and watching the visualizer, which is fun. I enjoyed it. That was a great idea.
I'm glad you liked it. I thought it was surprisingly useful.
It was really good. And then like similar to before, I didn't really like set intentions as much this time, but it was more like I found it useful with the mushrooms experience at the beginning to just write down everything that was on my mind, like the open loops in my head. And so I did that. And then, one of the intentions I did have going in actually was like to imagine what my life would look like in a year if everything went well, or like what do my wildest dreams look like for a year from now. And then to kind of pare down what I'm doing, because there are a lot of things that I'm doing and there are a lot of things that I could do. And it's very difficult to know where to put my energy and time. And so I just felt like I hadn't really taken a step back and tried to think very strategically for a while. especially not from a perspective of like, okay, what would succeeding beyond my wildest dreams look like? I hadn't really like visualized that in a long time. So I kind of had an intention going into that. So I started to do that. I started to write down like what, you know, an amazing life for me would look like a year from now. And like last Thursday, I just started bawling on the couch at some point, and it was really, really good. I had a headache the whole time as well, so that kind of put a damper on things, and I was quite tired. And there's a little bit of fighting. I think that's a lot of the anxiety that I feel when I'm coming up on Molly. And Molly is I don't know. I feel like maybe the sentry is kind of like not ready to give up the ghost a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. But I started crying and I just felt sad. And I don't remember when or how, but I realized like I never feel sad.
That was a huge breakthrough.
It was,
honestly,
it was a huge breakthrough. I was just like, I feel angry, I feel frustrated, I feel afraid, I feel anxious, but I never feel sad. And I realized, you know, I mean, this was not a new thing. I mean, it's not a new thing that I rarely feel sad, and it's not true that I never feel sad, but I mean,
you asked me like how many times I've seen you sad, and like outside of like
outside of being on
experiences, yeah, it was once and for a very brief period, and that was it.
And that's when I was in a disagreement with my mother. So, Mom, I clearly care about you. You're the only thing that's made me sad in the past like 6 months. We're good. We patched things up. We moved past it, but yeah. And I remember that I'm deathly afraid of sadness. Well, I'm deathly afraid of getting depressed, of major depression, and I think sadness feels like microdosing depression, and I'm like, none of that for me, please. And I think it's like, we were talking about this like in the car afterwards, like after we'd come down and everything. Sadness is really stigmatized in our society, you know? You're allowed to be angry, you're allowed to be anxious, but we really don't want, you know, come on and get happy. Folks are about as happy as they make up their minds
It's either
to be.
happy or like masculinity a lot of times is associated with like toughness or being just entirely numb.
You can be numb, you can be angry.
But you can't actually, you know, feel any healthy emotions, just the bad ones.
You can not feel sad. I think sadness is like, people talk about a sad sack, you know? And I was like, you know, my therapist had told me a long time ago, you feel your positive emotions to the extent that you feel your negative emotions. You know, if you only let yourself, if the capacity of any human alive, if the most any human could ever feel is like a 10, if you only get to a 2 on the negative, you're only going to get to a 2 on the positive.
That makes a lot of sense.
It makes sense to me. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's universal, but it makes sense to me, and I think it's true. And I remember at that point, like, trying to shame myself less. I had a big habit of shaming myself for feeling negative emotions. Like, you know, come on, get happy. Like, get out of this negativity. And I think I've done a lot of work on noticing when I'm feeling something negative and like really feeling it, letting myself feel it. But I don't think I thought about like sadness in particular. And like I'd gotten better at noticing when I'm angry, which has been very helpful, because I would go pretty far into an argument, like not realizing how mad I was and how unproductive I was being because I was so mad.
I mean, I was doing the same thing at the time.
I mean, it's easy to do, right? That's why we have to pay
gradually
therapists.
grown essentially.
And then I was like, it's funny because multiple people have told me since I moved to Alabama, I seem happier. And my therapist was like, do you agree? And I said, I don't think in terms of happiness. I didn't come into this relationship being like, I want to be happier. I said, I want to do less unnecessary suffering. I've said I want to have a more interesting life. But I think of myself as just like, I'm a miserable fuck and I'll always be a miserable fuck. And like, I can improve on other axes. But I had the thought, like, I'm never happy because I'm never sad. That I can feel joy and I can feel anger and I can feel resentment and I can feel excitement and I can feel energized and I can feel accomplished and I can feel proud. I can feel positive emotions and I can feel negative emotions. But I think happiness and sadness are, I don't know, a little bit, the way I feel doesn't sound like the way other people talk about them. And yeah, I just think there's an opportunity for me to practice trying to you know, I think it's safe for me to risk getting depressed. I think if I get depressed, like, I'll probably survive it. And
You will kick its ass.
no one is depending on me. You'll take care of the cats. You know?
And you.
And me, right? Like, you're a big part of why I think it's safe for me to risk depression, but, you know, and I don't think feeling sad is necessarily, but it's like, well, what if it does? Like, okay. So I spend a time in feeling depressed. I will probably survive that. And even if I don't, like, better to have a more interesting life. Like, let's give this a whirl. I don't know. I'm ready to try it. So I'm excited. And I feel like it was really helpful to have the mushroom experience because the mushrooms were like, help me see that I want to have more fun and I want to work more with people as opposed to against them. And then I've been really stuck in the week and a half since then. I'm like, well, how do I have fun? And I think ironically it's to feel sad. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's kind of like a necessary thing to have the balance.
I think so.
Yeah. No, I was very happy to have the experience with you. The high point for me was just talking, like, it in both instances, on both, like, with mushrooms and this week, like, it helped us communicate on way more effortlessly about, like, things that otherwise are harder to articulate, like around, like, relationships and things like that. And it was really nice.
We did a lot of appreciating of each other.
Yeah.
And I was really out of it. And, like, wasn't noticing things, and you noticed those things and, like, did the thing to avoid the risk. And yeah, I was telling you, I have this fear that, like, if I'm not on everything, like, you'll let it slip too, and then it won't get handled. And it's like, no, if I'm not around, like, you handle the important things. And, you know, again, we're not all gonna die if the dish doesn't get in the sink immediately. But when it comes to things that are, like, really important, I don't know, you just built trust, and I appreciated that.
Oh, I'm just happy to be there for us.
So anyway, what else do you have to say about that experience?
I'm trying to think, honestly. I'm still processing. That's the thing, is, like, after the trip we had last Thursday, like, I'm writing another, like, second blog post about it now, and, like, one of the breakthroughs didn't even come. It was over a week later, is, like, when, like, my mind finished processing bits and pieces. Like, you feel a lot, and especially, like, the mushroom trip especially, like, showed me how many emotional limiters I have in place, and, like, these seem to disable those to an either full or large degree. And, like, my mind is not used to processing all that. Like, it is overwhelming. And eventually gets processed, but it's not like I'll be noticing things for like probably the next couple of weeks now.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. But it was interesting and beneficial. So I'm glad we got to share it when it was fresh so we can remember more of it, I guess.
It was very wholesome.
Yeah, he said that a bunch of times. Like it's wholesome, peaceful.
And also peaceful and like I would say something like intense, or like it's like visuals where like it looks like the vibrations from something roaring, but in like the most peaceful possible sense of that. Like it's a weird duality.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, yeah, peaceful, but not necessarily peaceful. It's one of those things that like is not, I don't feel like I could articulate it adequately if I tried. I don't know if it could be articulated.
Yeah, I think one thing that I thought was drugs are just tools. Like we have so much drugs are amazing or drugs are terrible. They're neither. They're just tools. They can be used for great purposes. They can be used for terrible purposes. They can be super fun. They can be not fun at all. But I think if you go in and you want to get something out of them, they can offer you something. And that thing might not be entertainment. It may be enlightenment. It may be practice dealing with an emotion or a memory or a thought you haven't been able to deal with before. You know, it's hard to know exactly what you're going to get out of the experience. And that's part of if you knew exactly, you could just do it yourself. And I think you can do a lot of this yourself. I think you can be self-reflective. I think you can allow yourself to feel things. I think you can work on getting your own sentry at the door, like becoming aware of the sentry and, you know, getting into a situation in which you feel safe and empathetic. Like these are all things you can do without drugs, but I think these chemicals are useful and helpful.
They fast track a lot of the work.
Yeah, like my friend likes to say drugs will take you to the top of the mountain, but if you want to stay up there, you've got to climb.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. That's a really good analogy.
He's a smart dude.
Sounds like it.
All right, well, we'll probably have more to say as we integrate, but drugs are neutral. Check out the synthesizer. What is it called?
It is called Rhythm. It's rhythm, but with a V.
That is a stupid ass name. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not vouching for its name, but in terms of a
druggy
solid,
name, that.
And like we paid for, I think it's like $5 a month to unlock all the visuals.
It's
and
worth
like
$5.
They're solid. Like it's just a really, really good tool to have, and it's pretty rack solid. Whatever music you bring to it, it's fun. So check it out, and also check out the articles on your post about your trip experience on Sex and the State, kathyreisenwitz.substack.com. And you can also find the trip from my perspective on dancingwiththedevil.substack.com.
You can also find a link to it on Sex and the State.
Yeah, no, you were awesome enough to... You actually have followers.
Well, now you do too.
Thanks to you.
Thanks to you. He's a great writer. Don't listen to him. It's really good.
Seriously the greatest compliment anyone has ever given me. Saying that I'm a good writer.
Most people's drugs experiences I do not want to hear about. I mean, I was biased, but you did a really good job of articulating your experience, and I look forward to reading more of your writing.
Oh, thank you.
And thanks for tuning in, and bye.
Bye.